What's going on, guys? Got another completed build here. Wanted to give you the rundown on how I did it. This guitar is for Brandon Dion. He is on Instagram. You can follow him in the link below. And he wanted a purple guitar, and we went with some Kent Armstrong lipstick pickups and my special mounts that I made that I haven't sold any of yet. And we've got a quilted top from Kimball Hardwoods, purple. We actually bent over the full piece of wood. You'll see that in the video here, how I got this bent over. We then did some natural binding that I have in another video as well. The neck is a aged up maple neck. We put it in the light box for a couple of hours and it got a really neat amber color. You can see that contrast. Got some ratio tuners. I inlaid his name on the headstock here with my design. And this guitar took a little bit longer than I would have liked. There are a couple things I was not happy with. The top had a couple flaws in it that we tried to get out. And I got most of them out, but as I was bending the wood, it peeled a little bit. So I used the full piece of wood, I bent it over, and it peeled right there slightly. I used a little bit of filler to sort of cover it up, and you can't really tell, but I know it's there. And then as I bent over the top, the seam separated here. So what I did is I let this dry longer to try and get it to sort of come back, and it didn't. And then when I was doing the natural binding, I left the tape on too long and it absorbed. So in a couple spots, the coloring isn't to my liking. I don't know if you could tell, but I can tell. And then the other thing I didn't like is that after I got the neck all set up and done, any scratches on the neck with the light box show the whiter wood, and then you can't repair it because then you got to put it back in the light box, and I'm not putting the whole guitar in the light box. We've got some ratio Graph Tech saddles, ratio tuners like I said, reset up the guitar, used some black spray paint, and then I curved the heel as well. And I then put a natural sort of satin finish on it. Wanted to do some more satin looking guitars. I think this looks outstanding. So a couple of things I didn't fully like, but just being fully transparent with you guys, I do love the look of the back. This is essentially just black spray paint, and then I put a couple coats of the satin sealer on it. And I do like that look. I like the transition. I like the full binding. But give the video a watch here and we'll get right into it. Alright, so first things we're going to do is some basic woodworking. This top is from Kimball Hardwood. We're going to put an edge on it with the joiner and then glue that up. A couple passes on the joiner. Make sure it's nice and flat. I'll come back with some Type-On wood glue and glue this sucker up. Notice when I pushed it back and forth there, I was getting the glue on both sides. Clamp down the edges so they don't bind. And then just glue this so it's flat. And then that center clamp holds the center together as well. I've got a Corinna body blank all set. This is some of the stuff I've had for years. Nice light white piece of Corinna. Pass it through the drum sander and then take the top through as well. Make sure I get everything nice and flat. It's a beautiful piece of wood. And then, not really sure what happened here, but I've got to trim the body blank. Always check your camera settings. It's just my Craftsman 10-inch bandsaw, and we're cutting this all out. We'll then take this to my Craftsman table router with a 2-inch shear bit and just get the body blank all set. And we'll do the same thing with the top, but since I'm going to bend over this arm, I'm going to leave the one side out. So as I'm cutting this, you'll see me leave this side right here thick. And just finish cutting this off. Same thing upstairs to the pin router or table router. Just get this flat so it will glue on straight. Leave that edge. And then here's where the bend over is going to be. We're going to mark this on the body. What we're going to do is rough cut this and then sand it down so we can bend that quilted top over. Take this back upstairs to my big band saw, which is a Laguna 16 HD. We'll slice that off here. This is sped up 2 times, but we'll just take this cut nice and slow. Make sure it's clean. Take this outside and sand off with my sander. Make sure it's nice and flat. Make sure it's even as well. So once it looks flat, make sure it's level. Line this up downstairs where that cutout's going to be. And then we're going to do some relief back cuts. And that's what these lines are for. I'm going to get a little saw and cut out so this bend goes easier. So first I'm going to score each little line with a score tool. And then I'm going to use the StewMac fret cleaning saw, which is that little saw, and I'm just going to saw this out slowly. So I scored the line just to keep the blade in its spot, and then we'll go about every 1/8 inch here and saw this out. This helps the bend, so when I bend over on the wood, it doesn't compress, that there's a little bit of room to hold that bend, and then I won't get as much tear out on the wood as I'm bending it. I did get a little bit tear out, so I could have done it a little bit more in a couple spots. You'll see me sort of play with the edge and see how flexible it is. And I'm hoping with the steam as I do this that it goes smoothly. The trick with the prep work here is just to go slow, keep that blade in the spots that I scored. I'm trying not to take off too much. I go down a little bit more than a 1/16. You can see again I'm testing it to see how it's going. This is sort of the same principle as kerfing. The bend goes a lot easier in the spots that are flexible. So we'll just continue to score this and see how the bend goes. We'll then glue up using some Titebond wood glue. Glue this together. I use the tape where I don't want the glue to be. So that way when I steam this then it just bends over. Keep the glue away from that, and then I've got a sort of glue syringe that I'll inject into that bend
once it's all dry. So we'll then take this over to the clamp, my wine press clamp it down, let it sit for a couple days, and then we'll go live in video as I'm steaming it up.
Alright, so for the next part of this, I glued the top down and I left that undercut open, and I've got my steamer and I'm going to steam up this side. I've got those cut open ridges, so I'm hoping by steaming this and the ridges that this will bend down and just stay perfectly flat. What I'm going to do is soak this, get it nice and steamed up, bend it, and then what I'll do is I'll come back with the glue and glue it once it's already formed. That way I know it's going to sit. What's nice about this Wagner steamer, it's a wallpaper remover. It comes with this nice attachment, and so I've just sort of propped it up here. All the water will drip off into the can here, and I'm off the side of the shop, and this should just work out. So we'll let this steam for about an hour, and then we'll bend it on camera and see what happens. Alright, so we let this sit for about an hour. I got a little bit of a crack here that was already running through the board, so we're just going to go ahead and slowly clamp this down. The one thing that I know is starting to happen is it's starting to lift here slightly. So when I glue this, I'm going to have to clamp that down on this piece. It's lifting just a bit. Just clamping this down slowly. Alright, so we'll just let this sit until it dries out, which I'm assuming will be about 4 or 5 days. And we'll sneak some glue in there and finish up the body.
So we let that sit for about 3 weeks, let it dry, get a little of a screwdriver in the syringe and inject the glue in, clamp down on the top, and then run my clamps going down to pull this tight. Definitely want to start on the back side, and then I even use a wrench to get that clamping better. And then again, let this sit for another 2 weeks, let it dry before I take this upstairs, cut it, and then route it. So that was the little bit of leftover, and then we trim it perfectly on the Craftsman table router. We then take this to the rigid oscillating sander. I've got 2 of them. Get this all cleaned up, and then get back to some basic woodworking. So then we're going to go ahead and inlay Brandon's name on the headstock. So we pump this over to the Inventables CNC and run it with a 1/32 bit and just let it go. Did a practice run you can see below, and want to make sure that the depth is right. Sand the fuzz, tape off where we're going to place some epoxy. We're going to use epoxy and some purple to match the body. So I'll mix it in, check the viscosity, let it sit for a couple minutes, and then we'll pour it. And then the heat gun sort of gets all of the bubbles out, add a little more, and make sure it looks good. Again, we let this dry for a while as well. So about 2 weeks to let it fully dry. And then we have to sand off where I poured too much. And then after I poured it and sanded it flat, we went and dumped this back in the light box so that the color would match as well. So then we're going to do the rest of the body routes. And I've got the strat neck pocket and the pickup cavities are slightly wider. So you'll see me swap out the template here for a wider single coil pickup template. So I mark them and then route it out with this special one that I made. Do the routing on the back. And then drill some control wiring through, and then we'll route on the back side for a larger control cavity. That way I don't have to use a pick guard. Make sure everything is lined up and I know where stuff is going to sit. Clamp this sucker down. And then this is for the control cavity cover, a little recess. We're then going to mark a blade switch. And I've got an ingenious way to do this here. So I cut a little piece off a pick guard. I drill from the back side. And then I measure off on the front side. And then drill a bunch of little holes to get it started. So I sort of score this here. And then I'm going to come back, do some drilling. These are my high-end chisels. So the drilling sort of opens it up. And then I can move the drill through it. And then get a file and start cleaning up with a little file. It's a little bit back and forth, but I make sure that the plate is thin enough. And then what I do is I get a credit card with some sandpaper, and then I can even it out exactly where it needs to be. So file it to open it up a little bit more, and then I've got an actual Marriott key with some Stickum sandpaper on it, and then I can get it so it's perfect. So there's the credit card, cut it exactly to size, and then some Stickum sandpaper, and now I can sand on both sides and get it pretty tight and take out if I didn't drill the holes perfectly. And then I can hold my thumb and finger on the side to apply a little bit more pressure in a spot if I need it. So we'll install it, test it out, make sure it works. Fits perfectly. This one I may have drilled slightly wider, but it doesn't really matter. It's perfect for the exact size. We're then going to shave the neck heel down, get it so it's nice and tight. You get access to all those upper frets. So I've got a Stumac Japanese rasp here, and on this soft Corinna, works quickly. I've got my strat belly cut out, and I've got my lines for my jig. Pop this on Laguna. Make sure it doesn't bite, and just saw it off easily. We're then going to put a round over on here. So 1/4 inch round over. Do the back and the front at the same time. And then lots of sanding. Get this prepped and ready. Start with 120. Move up to 180. And then once I get to 300 grit, I apply this Glue Boost vinyl tape, peel it off, and then apply my purple. I've got a whole video on this for natural binding. If you guys haven't seen that, I just posted it a couple weeks ago. I'll put that in the link. But we want to do purple. Purple goes green when you apply it heavy. So the trick is to apply it as heavy as you can, and then come back and pull off some of the color with some steel wool. We're going to go ahead and scrape where I got some of the natural binding purple, just clean it up. So then here's the steel wool speeded up, and it's really great to watch this speeded up because you can see me pulling the color out and the figure of the wood really show. So this was about a half hour in total, and just the steel wool pulls out enough of the color that you see the beautiful figure of the wood and the color purple. Again, the whole video of this details the process, but this is just a great way to sort of watch it all happen. After that, we'll put some sanding sealer on here, and then I can see where I have the tear still, and I add a little bit of filler to the tear. So this is the sanding sealer. I'll put 3 coats of the Mohawk sanding sealer on. This is, I think, the second coat. Let that dry. Here is some aquafill wood filler in the 2 spots that have a little bit of a tear from the bend. What we'll do is apply the aqua coat, sort of smooth it off with some steel wool, and then go ahead and apply another coat of sanding sealer, and then we're ready for the full finish. But this at least helps it look a little bit better. This aqua coat's kind of nice, been using this for a while. And just a couple spots needed some TLC. So then here's the steel wool to clean it up. We'll put 1 more coat of sealer on here, and then we'll go ahead and apply 5 coats of satin lacquer. Again, this is from Mohawk, so I stuck with Mohawk sealing product. This actually came out really nice. Really like the satin look of this. And then we'll take you live in video here while I do some jamming.
We'll run through the pickups here real quick. This is the neck. And then between the neck and the middle. Between the middle and the bridge. And that's the bridge. So for the controls, I've just got a volume and one of my Veritone switches. Played around with the different color scheme. He can swap out the knobs. But overall, cool project. Couple lessons learned on my part. I did True Oil on the neck, and then I sanded that smooth, so the neck has got an incredible feel. Really like that. And then a bone nut, and I've got to still install some strap locks for him, but cool project. Lessons learned again on my part. But follow him on Instagram and you'll see some of his awesome videos with this guitar. So thanks for watching, guys. That is my custom build process. Long video, about 4 hours I had to edit down. Some lessons learned on my part, and we'll be seeing this in Brandon's videos on Instagram. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.